In Bangladesh, a political earthquake has just shaken the entire country. And in the aftershocks, a really fundamental debate is kicking off, not just about who should rule, but about how they should even be chosen in the first place. So today, we're going to unpack this huge argument over the very rules of the game. So what's this all about? Well, the central fight is whether to scrap the country's long-standing winner-take-all system. And the alternative being pushed? It's something called proportional representation, which promises a fair share of power for everyone. But what does that choice really mean for the future of Bangladesh's democracy? All right, so here's how we're going to break it down. We'll look at why this is all happening now, get clear on what these two systems actually are, hear the arguments for and against, and then see if there's any middle ground. Let's get into it. So, first up, why this debate and why right now? Well, it all goes back to the recent political upheaval. After the Awami League government fell, the calls for major, deep reforms got a whole lot louder, and proportional representation quickly became the #1 demand. And make no mistake, this isn't some fringe academic discussion. Major political players are drawing their battle lines. You've got parties like Jamiat-e-Islami who are all in for the change, while one of the biggest parties in the country, the BNP, is saying absolutely not. The stage is definitely set for a political showdown. Okay, before we dive into the arguments, we need to get on the same page. Let's be really clear about what we're talking about. What exactly are these two systems at the heart of the debate? So here's the fundamental difference. On one side, you've got the current system, first past the post, or FPTP. Think of it as a bunch of local races. You vote for a person in your area, and the winner gets the entire seat. On the other side is the proposal, proportional representation, or PR. Here, you vote for a party, and the number of seats they get in parliament is based on their total national vote. One system usually leads to strong, single-party governments, while the other almost always creates multi-party parliaments. So to put it simply, under the system Bangladesh has right now, the country is sliced up into 300 different areas. In each of those areas, it's a straight-up race. The candidate who gets the most votes, even if it's just one single vote more than the next person, gets all the power for that seat. It is truly winner-take-all. Now, compare that to PR. In this system, it's all about the big picture, the national total. The math is really straightforward. If your party gets, say, 10% of all the votes cast across the country, you get about 10% of the seats in parliament. In this case, that's 30 seats. The whole idea behind this is that no vote is ever wasted. Okay, so let's dig into the first side of this debate. Why are some parties pushing so hard for this change? What's the problem they're trying to fix? The argument for proportional representation really boils down to one simple word: fairness. Proponents say, look, a party's power in parliament should directly reflect its actual support among the people. They want to get rid of so-called wasted votes and give smaller parties a real chance to have a voice. And crucially, they want to stop a situation where a party can get less than half the votes, but still walk away with a massive dominant majority. And to make their case, supporters of PR don't just talk about theory. They point to a very stark, very real example from Bangladesh's own recent history, the 2008 election. For them, this election perfectly highlights everything that's wrong with the current system. Now, just look at how this slide shows the distortion. It's kind of wild. The Awami League got 49% of the vote, so not even a majority, but they ended up with a massive 77% of the seats. Meanwhile, the BNP got a very respectable 33% of the vote, but that only translated to 10% of the seats. So a 16-point gap in votes turned into a colossal 200-seat difference in parliament. And this quote, well, it just perfectly captures that feeling of injustice. The argument is that the current system allows a minority of voters to create an overwhelming majority in parliament that can then act like an authoritarian power. For the supporters of PR, this isn't a feature of democracy. It's a fundamental flaw that has to be fixed. Okay, so that's the dream of a fairer system. But what sounds like a democratic dream to some is seen as an absolute nightmare by others. So now, let's flip the coin. Why is a huge party like the BNP so dead set against a system that, on the surface, sounds so fair? The case against PR really centers on one big fear: chaos. Critics warn that it will shatter parliament into a ton of small parties, making it almost impossible for anyone to form a stable majority government. And that, they say, leads to weak, shaky coalitions, a government that can't make decisions, and a system where politicians are more loyal to their party bosses than to the people who actually voted for them. And you can see how strongly the BNP feels about this. But here's where it gets really interesting. You'd think the BNP, after getting crushed by the system in 2008, would be the first ones demanding a change, right? But their opposition is actually a massive strategic gamble. They believe that in the next election, that same winner-take-all system could give them a huge majority. So they're choosing to risk getting nothing for the chance to win everything. And to back up all these fears, opponents of PR don't just talk hypothetically. They point to real-world examples from around the globe. They ask Bangladesh to look at countries where this system has been tried, and they almost always start with one specific European country as their prime example of what can go wrong. And that number is 69. Since the end of World War II, Italy has had 69 different governments. That averages out to a new government pretty much every single year. Opponents of PR say this is what chronic instability looks like. And they point to similar struggles in places like Israel and Nepal as more proof that the system is just a recipe for gridlock. So this table really breaks down the specific fears for Bangladesh. Critics are worried about governments collapsing all the time, politicians who answer only to party bosses, and a totally new kind of corruption, not buying votes, but buying a high spot on your party's election list. And maybe the biggest fear of all, that a weak, deadlocked government becomes an easy target for foreign meddling or even a military takeover. So we've heard two powerful but completely opposite arguments. One side is crying out for fairness. The other is terrified of instability. But is it really just a choice between those two extremes? Or is there another way? A lot of experts are saying, hey, wait a minute. This isn't an either-or decision. All around the world, there are hybrid systems that are specifically designed to try and balance the pros and cons of both models to get the best of both worlds. And the most popular of these hybrids is called mixed member proportional, or MMP. You see it in places like Germany and New Zealand. It's actually pretty clever. You get 2 votes. One vote is for your local representative, just like the current system. Your second vote is for the party you support nationally. Then that party vote is used to add top-up members to parliament to make sure the final result is fair and actually proportional to the national vote. But, most experts will caution you that no system is a magic wand. They argue for a much more careful, step-by-step approach. Step 1. You have to strengthen the core institutions first, like the Election Commission. Step 2. You have to build a political culture where compromise isn't a dirty word. And only then, as a third step, should you think about a partial shift, maybe keeping 200 local seats and making 100 proportional as a first experiment. And all of this leaves us with the fundamental question at the very heart of this debate. When you're writing the rules for democracy, what do you prioritize? Is it the perfect mathematical fairness that ensures every single vote counts? Or is it the